You know that feeling when you're facing a challenge, right? Maybe it's a big presentation, could be a new project, maybe even trying to navigate the financial markets.
hmm
It often feels like the biggest obstacle isn't, out there, it's inside.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that inner voice, maybe old habits kicking in, or just that emotional roller coaster we all ride sometimes.
Totally. It's that internal landscape, the one we maybe don't pay enough attention to,
Yeah.
that can really decide how far we actually go.
Exactly.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. How to become your own personal coach, your own kind of trading psychologist.
And we're using insights from a really, I think, transformative resource, The Daily Trading Coach, 101 Lessons for Becoming Your Own Trading Psychologist by Brett N. Steenbarger.
Right. And the mission here, for you listening, isn't just about trading itself. I mean, that's the context.
Sure.
But it's really a blueprint for self-mastery in pretty much any high-stakes situation.
Yeah, we're going to unpack the lessons that, really cut through the noise, give you a bit of a shortcut to understanding yourself better.
So you can achieve your ideals, not just in the markets, but, well, in life.
Mm-hmm. So what does this actually mean for you? Let's dig in.
Okay, let's start with the foundation, the core idea.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually become the architect of your own change.
Which sounds big, but the concept is surprisingly straightforward.
Right. You become the actor of your ideals, as he puts it, just by making self-development a daily thing, a habit.
Yeah, he's very clear. This isn't just a book you read once. It's meant to be a resource you can use every day. It's about being deliberate, purposeful about your growth.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. How do you actually kickstart that change? Especially when, our instinct might be to shy away from the uncomfortable stuff.
Well, that's where emotion comes in, and maybe not in the way you'd expect. He argues that this common advice, just think positive, can sometimes be, well, a bit like denial, like sweeping your weaknesses, your clutter, under the rug.
Okay, we know that doesn't work long term. The clutter just piles up.
Exactly. So instead of ignoring it, the book talks about the surprising role of, let's say, strong emotion. Maybe a deep yearning for things to be different.
Organ pain.
Or even pain, yeah, like the harrowing losses. He gives an example of a trader who only really committed to self-coaching after losing a good deal of their capital.
Wow. So that really painful experience became the catalyst, the emotional force, he calls it.
Precisely. So rather than ignore weakness, the idea is to, counterintuitively perhaps, make friends with your weakness.
Make friends with it. How does that work?
He uses this concept called the Devon principle. It's about radical acceptance, like accepting something really uncomfortable, maybe a physical trait like a strawberry birthmark, or even just the daily grind of something unpleasant but necessary, like changing dirty diapers. You don't have to like it, but ignoring it is way less productive than just acknowledging it and dealing with it. The real gain, he says, is in embracing that initial pain or discomfort.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do you embrace it? Just grit your teeth.
He suggests giving voice to stressful events. Let's say you had a terrible trading day or a project went sideways.
Yeah.
Write about it in detail, in a journal for maybe at least a half hour a day. It's not just venting, though.
Okay. What's the purpose?
The idea is that this deliberate process can actually, sear the lessons into your mind. It helps prevent you from making the same mistakes again. If you really connect with how bad that mistake felt.
You're less likely to repeat it. Makes sense.
And building on that, there's this concept of psychological visibility,
Right.
which is really about knowing yourself deeply, your values, dreams, and ideals, and then setting positive goals based on what you did best yesterday.
So focusing on strength, not just dissecting failures.
Exactly. It's self-awareness aimed at building, not just fixing.
I like that. And he gives a practical tool for this too, doesn't he? The emotional thermometer.
Yeah, that's a great one. Super simple. You basically draw two thermometers side by side, one for frustration, one for confidence.
I like that.
During whatever you're doing, trading, working on something tough, even a workout, you just mark where you are on each scale.
So it's like a quick check-in.
It helps you catch your state of mind before it can disrupt performance, like a little dashboard for your head.
That's really useful. And it's not just internal work, is it? He talks about environment too.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Change your environment. Change yourself. The core idea there is that discrepancy is the mother of all change.
Discrepancy, meaning?
Meaning exposing yourself to differences. Actively seek out divergent views. Talk to people who think differently. Examine related views in other fields.
Why? to challenge your assumptions.
Exactly. It shakes things up, forces you to question your own approach, and sometimes that helps you discover hidden strengths. He even mentions a personal story about having appendicitis.
Right, at Elmhurst Hospital.
Yeah, being forced into that totally new, unexpected environment actually broadened his perspective way beyond his normal routine. It was disruptive, but ultimately useful.
Okay, so we've accepted our weaknesses, maybe embraced some discomfort, started tracking our state. But how do we actually change those deep, ingrained thought patterns?
Well, this is where the coaching aspect really comes in. The book makes a pretty bold claim. Our self-talk is our self-coaching.
Meaning the voice in our head is constantly guiding us whether we like it or not.
Pretty much. The way you talk to yourself internally shapes your performance minute by minute.
So if our thoughts are always coaching us, how do we make sure that coaching is, constructive and not destructive?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The book talks about schemas of the mind. Think of them as your mental maps.
Okay, the filters we see the world through.
Exactly. And problem patterns pop up when these schemas get distorted and then become self-reinforcing.
Like getting stuck in a loop.
Yeah, you can become quite robotic, just replaying the same old thoughts out of habit. Your brain's on autopilot, but maybe flying you into a wall.
So what's a common way this happens?
One big trap is turning your desires, things you want, into rigid demands. Things you feel should or must happen.
Ah, the shoulds and musts.
Right. And when reality doesn't match those rigid demands, it leads to exaggerated emotional responses. You go from wanting something to feeling like you absolutely need it, which sets you up for disappointment.
Okay, so how do you spot when you're falling into that trap or other negative patterns?
He has a great term for it. Stinkin' thinkin'.
Huh. I like that. Stinking thinking.
It's memorable, right?
Well,
He says your worst trading decisions, for example, are often a fantastic tell.
tell for what?
A tell that your mind has been hijacked, that your internal thought process has basically pulled you out of focusing on what's actually happening, out of that market immersion.
Or just out of reality in any situation.
Yeah.
You start reacting to the negative voice in your head.
Exactly, like that little pessimistic co-pilot you mentioned.
So how do you fight back against this stinking thinking?
The cognitive journal is presented as a key weapon here.
Okay, we talked about journaling for stressful events. How is this different?
It builds on it. You still track the situation, your self-talk, and the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But you add a fourth column, coaching talk.
Coaching talk.
Yeah. This is where you actively, vigorously, and emotionally challenge those negative thoughts. You basically have a debate with yourself on paper, and you make sure the constructive side wins.
Like being your own internal debate coach.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just journaling. The book suggests actually experimenting with your beliefs.
What, like in the real world?
Yeah, cognitive experiments. You design actual tests to challenge your negative thoughts.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He mentions a trader who had this belief that he had to go all in on his ideas to succeed. Big risk, big reward thinking.
Okay, a common mindset.
So the challenge, the experiment, was to force him to divide his capital into, say, 4 equal segments and put them into 4 different ideas.
Ah, so it wasn't just about risk management.
No, it was a direct challenge to his belief that he had to go all in. It demonstrated, in practice, that diversification could work, that there wasn't only one way to succeed. It opened his mind.
That's powerful, testing your assumptions in the real world.
Then there's also the psychodynamic angle,
Yeah.
looking at how old patterns replay themselves in the present.
Okay, going deeper now.
Yeah. He suggests using tools like sine wave charts, basically mapping the peaks and valleys, the highs and lows from your life history and your trading career
Find what?
to find common themes, maybe recurring struggles with adequacy and inadequacy or patterns of boredom and risk-taking, things that might be driving your behavior now without you realizing it.
Like uncovering the subconscious drivers.
Kind of. Once you spot those themes, the idea is to crystallize repetitive patterns.
Systolize them.
Break them down, understand the mechanics. He suggests a schema. What's the underlying need? What's the feeling state it creates? What's the defense mechanism you use? What are the repetitions and what are the consequences?
Wow, okay, so you're really dissecting your own self-sabotage, like taking apart a machine to see why it keeps breaking.
Exactly. And what fuels breaking these patterns? Sometimes it's the sheer power of hating your past patterns.
Hating them. That sounds intense.
It can be. A total rejection of a destructive habit, almost like an addict developing a hatred for drugs, can provide that powerful emotional fuel for lasting change.
So the advice is?
Pick one enemy pattern, one really damaging habit in your trading or your work or life, and make it your mission to conquer that one thing. It gives you focus.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Focus on one battle. So we've covered the inner game, thoughts, emotions, past patterns. What about just our basic state, our physical and mental energy?
Crucial, absolutely crucial. The author draws a really important line between stress and distress.
Okay, what's the difference?
Stress, he says, is a natural mobilization of mind and body. It can actually facilitate performance. Think about driving in a tricky situation like a snowstorm.
Right, you get hyper-focused.
Exactly. That's stress helping you. Distress, on the other hand, happens when you see situations as acute threats or when you feel a lack of control.
And the key is?
Preparation. If you are prepared for adversity, you will respond with normal stress, not distress. It comes down to feeling equipped to handle what comes your way.
And what often leads to that feeling of threat or lack of control?
Unrealistic expectations are a big one, especially in high-stakes fields. Expecting to, say, make a sustainable living from trading within the first years is usually unrealistic.
Yeah, or expecting overnight success in almost any field.
Right. It sets you up for distress when reality bites. The focus, he argues, should be on improving trading processes, or whatever your process is, not on immediate outcomes.
Which ties into the whole marathon, not a sprint idea he emphasizes.
Absolutely. He really hammers that home. Fatigue is the enemy of concentration. Simple as that.
And your physical state directly impacts your mental state.
Directly. Your physical vibrancy fuels a positive, energetic mood. If you neglect your body sleep, nutrition, exercise, you're likely to be inconsistent in your personal discipline.
There's a correlation, he says, between your energy level and the quality of your trading.
And you have to watch out for memory effects, where maybe a bad day drains you and that low energy carries into the next day, creating a downward spiral.
Like trying to run that race on an empty tank day after day.
You got it. So you need to actively manage your energy. And one way to reduce the pressure that drains energy is what he calls emotional diversification.
Emotional diversification, like diversifying a portfolio.
Kind of. It means cultivating satisfaction and success in other parts of your life. Family, hobbies, learning something new.
Why does that help trading or performance in general?
It reduces the pressure on that one thing to be your sole source of validation or success. If trading or your main project is the only thing you care about, the stakes feel impossibly high.
But if you have other sources of satisfaction,
It lowers the temperature, it makes it easier to get into the zone, that state of flow, because it doesn't feel like your entire self-worth is on the line with every decision.
and speaking of the zone, he connects intuition to having a still mind.
Yes. Accessing that deeper insight requires quiet. He has a great line. Those who fear boredom never achieve the still mind.
Ooh, that's interesting. Fear of boredom.
Yeah, it can lead people to constantly seek action, like overtrading or chasing thrills, just to avoid being still, which is the opposite of what you need for clear thinking.
Are there tools to help with that?
He mentions things like biofeedback devices, which can help train you to achieve that calm, focused state. It's about learning to be present and quiet internally.
And finally, under this theme, resilience. Emotional resilience.
Yeah, the ability to not take negative events personally, which is easier said than done, of course. He uses the powerful example of Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp. Frankl's sense of purpose, his reason why, gave him a reason to keep going despite unimaginable suffering.
So finding your purpose helps resilience. How does that apply practically, say, in trading?
Manage your risk to match your resilience level. Don't trade so large or take risks so big that a loss completely wipes you out emotionally.
Think in percentages maybe, not just dollars.
Exactly. Use percentage terms for losses. Frame it in a way that doesn't trigger that overwhelming personal sense of failure. Know your limits and operate within them.
Okay, so we understand ourselves better, we're managing our state. How do we translate all this into concrete actions and ongoing adaptation?
Right, connecting the dots. The book talks about behavioral conditioning. The core idea is that emotion accelerates behavioral learning.
We learn faster when feelings are involved.
For better or worse, yes. And often, destructive trading behaviors are the result of pain avoidance. We learn bad habits quickly if they help us avoid immediate discomfort, even if they hurt us long term.
So understanding that mechanism is key to changing the behavior.
Definitely. And you don't have to figure it all out in isolation. Social learning is huge.
Learning from others.
Yeah, building collaborative relationships with peer traders or peers in your field, joining social networks.
Why is that so valuable?
Because observing others' rewards, and just as importantly, their mistakes, it essentially multiplies experience and shortens learning curves.
You learn from their experiments, not just your own.
Precisely. He even suggests maybe starting your own blog or finding an online network to share and learn. Leverage that collective wisdom.
And how do you reinforce the good behaviors you're trying to build?
Good old positive reinforcement. But be specific. He talks about shaping your behavior by rewarding, in your journal perhaps, even very small things that you did right.
Celebrating the small wins.
Exactly. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you focused on always learning, always building on strengths, rather than just fixing weaknesses. It fuels progress.
What about dealing with past failures or traumas that still affect performance? Like a really bad loss that makes you gun-shy.
That's where exposure work comes in. It's a powerful technique used in therapy, too.
Exposure work. Sounds intense.
It can be, but you do it gradually. You can do it first in imagery, just visualizing the stressful situation while staying calm.
Right.
And then you do it in vivo, meaning in live trading or in the real situation. But you start small, with small trading sites, for instance, and gradually ramping up.
What's the goal?
The goal is to reprogram that fear response, to train yourself through repeated experience of safety at low levels to stay calm and focused, even when facing that trigger again. You desensitize yourself.
Okay, that sounds like a very structured way to overcome past hurdles. Now, the book also includes insights from actual professional traders, right? What can we learn from them?
Yeah, let's hear from the trenches, so to speak. Several key themes pop up again and again.
Like what?
Well, the power of the journal and using data comes up a lot. There's Michael Sinedza, who realized from his journal that he kept moving his stop losses up too quickly.
So he was cutting winning trades short, getting out at break even.
Exactly. A form of self-sabotage he only spotted by tracking his actions. And that's a lesson for anyone, right? Track your patterns. Where do you bail too early on something good?
Good point. Who else?
Another trader, Dave, flat out says his journal is more powerful than any indicator because your execution data don't lie. It's about facing the facts of what you actually do.
Okay, data doesn't lie. What about finding your edge?
Rob Hanna had this big realization. Research and not the trading made me the money. He focused relentlessly on finding a quantifiable edge through testing.
So it wasn't about intuition or gut feeling for him.
It was about systematic study, finding what actually works statistically. And that applies anywhere: marketing, studying, product development. Test your ideas, find what gives you a real measurable advantage.
Discipline comes up too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Chris developed a strict twice wrong and I'm out rule for adding to losing positions. He learned the hard way about standing up after being beaten down.
So knowing when to cut your losses, having firm boundaries.
Crucial. Whether it's a trade, a project, maybe even a relationship sometimes, knowing when persisting is just causing more damage.
What about community? We mentioned social learning.
Yeah, Larry Fisher explicitly credits his network of friends and colleagues for support and sharing real-time market experiences. It highlights that need for a support system, people who get it.
And Corey Rosenblum, he talks about thinking conceptually.
Right. Shifting from just looking at charts or indicators to seeing the market as a grand chess game, understanding the bigger picture, the underlying dynamics.
That seems applicable to any complex system you're trying to navigate. Step back, see the patterns.
Exactly. And related to that, successful traders diversify more than just their stocks. They diversify their strategies.
Yeah.
They use different approaches, trade different time frames, maybe have strategies for up markets, down markets, sideways markets.
Why? Because market conditions change.
Precisely. Markets evolve, edges disappear. What worked last year might not work this year. So you need a pipeline, constantly developing new strategies, finding new sources of profit.
It's about adaptability, a universal lesson.
Totally. You can't stand still in any competitive field. You have to keep learning, keep innovating.
And underpinning all of this professional insight is, inevitably, risk management.
Always. Understanding your stats, average wins, average losses, win rate to forecast potential returns, and, crucially, sizing your positions, your bets, to match your personal resilience level.
Controlling the controllable, essentially.
Yeah.
Making sure a loss doesn't take you out of the game emotionally or financially.
Exactly. Playing the long game. It's all about sustainability.
Wow. Okay, so we've really taken a deep dive here into what it means to be your own trading coach, your own psychologist.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, isn't it? Self-awareness, discipline, constant learning. It really transforms not just your trading or your work, but your whole approach to getting better.
And the pursuit of prosperity, as Steenbarger puts it, it's not just about the money, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's about actualizing your potential,
Yeah.
about being the person you are capable of becoming, living out those ideals we talked about at the start.
Yeah, being the architect of your own change.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. The author quotes someone saying, "Science strives to achieve unity of fact, and art strives to achieve unity of feeling."
Okay.
So if you combine those, understanding the facts about yourself and harnessing your feelings constructively, what masterpiece will you create by truly becoming the play actor of your own ideal in your life?